So our learning target for today is I can understand story structure, including conclusions. The story structure is just how the story is broken up. So as you know, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, that's where you're usually introduced to the characters, you see the setting, and you sometimes may see the conflict or the problem in the story. In the middle, that's where the majority of the events happen. That's typically where you see the problem. It may be getting solved there, and then you also will see different actions that the character takes. The end is where you find the solution. That's usually where the character changes. We have a few vocabulary words. Our first vocabulary word is on page 107. The word is stable. A stable is a building in which horses are kept, fed, and cared for. Our next vocabulary word is on page 109. The word is howling. Howling is producing the long, low sound made by a strong wind. In this story, we have the wind that's howling, but we also know that animals can howl, and howling is just a long, low sound that is being made. So first, let's reread page 91 and Going West. And I want you to think about how Mama feels living on the prairie. Mama planted a garden. Jake carried water from the creek to do the washing. I minded the baby and swept the dirt floor and helped Mama hang check curtains on the window. There, she said, we are ready for visitors, but no visitors came. We were alone on the vast prairie. So how do you think Mama feels? There's going to be another section where you'll be able to answer these questions. So I do want you to write it down. How do you think Mama feels living on the prairie? Next, before we read, we're going to make a prediction. Remember, we said that a prediction is when we use pictures, sometimes the title of the story, to figure out what may happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to preview the illustrations on pages 100 to 117 of Going West, and I want you to predict whether Mama will feel less lonely as the story continues. So as the story goes on, will Mama feel less lonely? And I only want you to make this prediction based off the illustrations. So now we're going to actually read the pages. Mama was frying donuts, and Jake and I were doing our lessons on the dirt floor when visitors finally came. Indians. Jake hid under the bed. I crept behind the rocking chair, my knees trembling with fright. They looked so fierce. But Mama smiled. She gave one of the Indians a donut. The Indian smiled. Mama kept on making donuts, and the Indian kept on eating donuts until Papa came home. And then the Indians went away. The winter turned cold. Mama stored up potatoes and berries and nuts for the long winter to come. Papa went hunting for deer. He came back with Mr. Swenson. Mr. Swenson stayed for supper, and afterward he played his flute while Mama sang, sitting around the fire. And suddenly, the prairie wasn't empty anymore. We had a neighbor. Do they have Christmas out here? Jake asked, and I wondered too. But Mama said, of course. So we hung our stockings by the chimney. Rebecca got a cup and Jake a whistle, and I found Nellie, a rag doll with yellow braids. Later, we had wild turkey for dinner, and Mama opened the jam she had been saving all year. And everything was just like Christmas. Now the icy wind seeped through cracks in our log walls. We put on all the clothes we had and huddled next to the fire. One morning, it was so cold that Mama's fresh baked bread was frozen and solid. And then it began to snow. It snowed for 3 days and 3 nights. Papa tied a rope from the house to the stable so he could feed the animals. Jake and I did our lessons, and Mama helped me sew on my quilt, and we all listened to the wind howling outside. At last, everything grew still. Looking out, we saw no wood pile, no stable, no sky, nothing but snow drifting up to the roof of our little house. It was a long, cold winter. We had nothing to eat but potatoes and hard biscuits and nuts. Rebecca cried because she was hungry. And one day, Mama counted the potatoes and said, "There are only 6 left." But then slowly the snow began to melt. Each day, the drifts under our window grew smaller. Papa took down his rifle and went hunting again. And that night, the smell of rabbit stew made our house warm once more. One morning, when the grass was turning new green, Papa said, "It's planting time." He hitched our horse to the plow and broke through the tough prairie grass to the dark, rich soil beneath. For days he worked, plowing long, straight rows. Then Mama dropped in seeds, and Jake and I covered them up. The warm sun shone. The seeds sprouted. And all around us, as far as my eyes could see, was our farm. It was Mama's birthday. Jake and I picked flowers for the table. Papa brought home a surprise, a little tree from the creek to plant by the front door. Next year, if the corn does well, he said, we will buy a piano. And Mr. Swenson came for dinner with another surprise, his new wife. "Welcome to our house," said Mama. We ate Mama's food and listened to Mrs. Swenson tell about back east and sang sitting around the fire. Outside, a soft wind was blowing in the new corn. I looked around at Mama in her rocking chair, and Rebecca sleeping and Jake leaning on Papa's knee, and our house felt like home. So now there are going to be a few questions that you are going to answer pertaining to the book.